Okay, part 3. So basically, I'm going to talk to you now about the characters and the plot. So when you're doing your first reading, you can gather what's going on. Now, first things first, I said in the other parts of the video that basically the first fleet that went out to Australia is what the play is based on. And I told you that the officers were expected, as part of their role, to document everything that was happening. So I told you there was also historical sources. So the main historical source, for any of you who want to really extend yourself and do further research into the period, is the historical source, The Fatal Shore by Robert Hughes. He collated all the information and wrote a book about using all the original historical sources and documents and diaries and accounts about what happened during that period. And it is a really interesting period in time. So the playwright used that source to actually develop the plot, but actually more so the characters. So the characters actually recorded accounts, and the characters actually were spoken about in the reports. So you need to remember that in the historical source was documents of suffering of the brutality of Britain's convict transportation system. That's what it's documenting. And the First Fleet was very significant, and this is what the playwright used the information from this. However, the characters are based on real characters, real people that existed, but obviously for the sake of drama and for the play to be able to achieve all the aims it wants to, some of it's been adapted, adjusted. So if you were to go back to the original source, you might find that 2 characters that actually existed in the First Fleet that went transported to Botany Bay, you might find actually they're 1 character in the play. So there's been some adaptation, but some of them are very, very accurate to the people. So let's talk about the officers first. Now, the officer who, the captain that led and was in charge was Captain Phillips. Captain Phillips is a lovely character in the play. He came out of the actual character that it's based on, came out of retirement. He was seen as very wise, very able. When I say retirement, you're not visualising a 70-year-old, because people retired from the army and the military and the navy so much younger. But he's probably about 45 and was seen as very wise, very well mannered, very considerate, very intelligent and wise. And that's what you see. He is the only character that is for the Royal Navy that exists, because obviously the Navy and the idea of travelling had to be what drove the transportation. All the other characters come from more the military. So basically, if you see a character with RN, it's Royal Navy, RM, I didn't write it, military. So basically, Captain Phillips, lovely, speaks with wisdom. You will love his words. He is very sensible, very well thought out, highly educated, and he's very much one for not dictating, but creating a debate within his officers about how they're going to develop this society. Remember, like I said, it's a micro society, it's a small society, and they're using that model to how we should run a bigger macro society. So he's in charge. Then you have characters like Robbie Ross. They're really much the people that represent the brutality of the criminal justice system. He just sees them as animals, these convicts. He sees them as useless. He sees them as pointless. He sees them beyond ability to redeem themselves. And he basically just wants to dictate and punish. A really brutal character, and you'll see that in the way he treats the characters. And then there's other characters, which I'm not going to go into too much more. We've got Campbell and Dawes and Johnson. They have their own roles, which you'll identify. Reverend Johnson's quite significant because, believe it or not, you forget the context of time, how critical religion was for formulating a society. His viewpoint's really significant on his take and morally what should happen in this new society that they're building. You've got Harry Brewer, who's a really interesting character, who, the reason he's interesting, he was originally a criminal, but Captain Phillips took him under his wing when he was younger and sort of made him part of the ship, and he is the midshipman, and he's very much linked, and he sort of monitors him. But Harry's in a lot of conflict through the play and where he belongs and what his feelings are about everything. So he's quite an interesting play. But one of the most important is Second Lieutenant Ralph Clark. Now Ralph Clark turns up at the beginning of the play, really brutal. You see him whipping another character who's being flogged sideways because I think he stole something. And basically you see him seeing all the females as completely disgusting, disease-ridden whores, basically. He's really brought up within the upper classes. He's actually left his wife at home. Historically, he wanted to take his wife, but his wife saw one look at the ship and ran a mile. So basically, he has this wife, who's new wife. He adores her. He sees her as pure and innocent and educated, and you hear him reference her many times. He writes a diary and talks to her. And he sees her as pure and innocent. So these other women, in contrast, the convicts, he just thinks are complete and utter whores, and he refers to them as whores. However, what's interesting is in the play he forms a relationship with one of the convicts, which I'll come to now. So the character here is the Aboriginal Australian. So he is the one that I said looks on and takes an observational role and contradicts this, like, why do we Great Britain inflict our culture on another culture and dominate it, and yet is our culture superior? So it's looking at contrasting cultures. So he's very significant, and he appears 4 times in the play. Then we have the convicts. So Act 1, Scene 1 is the only scene in the play where you see them on the cramped, brutal conditions of the ship. The ship takes 9 months to reach Australia in awful penned conditions. So we see that one scene showing how they're like caged animals at the bottom of this ship, and it's really, really harrowing. It's supposed to be a shocking start. And then we basically see the convicts in Act 1, how they're treated, and then how over the time of the play things change. So basically we've got Liz Morden, rough as diamond. She's used and abused by her family, very Cockney, so her speech is all with Cockney slang. She's very mistreated, which shows why she's so tough and aggressive. You've got Mary Brennan, who is actually, believe it or not, pimped out, used for prostitution by her friend Dabby. Dabby's from Cornwall, very homesick, but really resourceful. She knows how to survive, to the point where she even puts her friend out to be prostituted. But otherwise, if she doesn't do that, then they might starve. So they're very desperate characters. You've got Sideway. He is a pickpocket in the West End, and he's a very funny character, actually, very entertaining, and he sort of brings in some other sort of themes about theatre and what theatre's about. You've got Wisehammer. It's quite interesting because some of these characters, and Wisehammer is Jewish, Ketch is Irish, and you see the racism come through the play, because at the period of time, Jewish people and Irish people were treated particularly bad, and there was a lot of negativity towards them. But Wisehammer comes from quite an educated background, and talks, the theme about the power of language is explored through his character. Then you have Ducklin, who actually was supposed to be hung, but Harry put in a good word for her. He took a liking to her, and basically she was going to be hung, but they changed it to transportation after the appeal of Harry. Real complicated relationship that develops between these two, and you see how there is a sense that he thinks she belongs to him and she feels owned because of the desperate nature in the changeover. So they've got a relationship together. Now, I said to you, Ralph, at the beginning, he is really negative about the convicts and particularly the women. But he's only second lieutenant. He wants promotion. And he comes up with a plan with a combination of other characters. And Phillips, who knows what the Greeks did, actually believes in educating people in society to make the society better. Anyway, Ralph comes up, combined with this other character, the idea of staging a play to reform the characters, educate the characters, make them be better citizens. And there's a whole debate. There's a great scene where these characters anti it, for it, the opposing ideas, sitting on the fence, not sure. All these characters debate it, but in the end, he's allowed to stage the play. Although throughout our play, he meets lots of opposition here and there. But he actually becomes socialised as well throughout the play. We see these characters become more eloquent, more able to express their feelings to one another, formulate better relationships, gain compassion to each other rather than aggression. And you see a change in these people through staging the play. But he also grows to respect these underclass, criminal class characters for being human beings with potential. And he becomes very fond of them, he grows to respect them, and he actually falls in love with Mary. And so basically, through this story of staging a play, we look at society and how society can be formed, how society can be improved, and all the play's purposes come through towards the journey. The play has 22 scenes, 11 scenes in each act, and some scenes are tiny, you just get a snippet of a moment, other scenes are more extended. So it's still got those epic features, although it is chronological in order. It doesn't go back and forward, it's always moving at a progressive pace through the story. So the reason I've done all these talks to you is it might take a couple of reads for you to get the hang of it. So my task for this week is to watch my videos, make notes about the purpose of the play and what the play's about. In the actual play, which I gave you to take away with you, I would like you to read the introduction, and then next week I'm going to set you the reading of the play. The reason being, I think for the majority of you, you will need to read it twice to get the idea. Now, this should give us a head start for when we finally return to school, and therefore we can crack on with staging scenes. It's a great play. Don't freak out if you don't get it straight away. It's not the easiest play to read, but for some of you, you will get into it. You can also look online. There are 1 or 2 versions. They're not brilliant, but you know, it gives you an idea. There's also some dramas you can watch around the context of time. One of them is Australia, because wrong period of time, but there is an Aborigine in there. It gives you a real sense of the Aborigine culture and the clash between the white culture that invades the native Australians. There's also a drama on the BBC called Mary Brennan, which, as you can see, no, it's called Mary Bryant. Mary is a combination of these 2 characters because actually the BBC came up with their own script, influenced by the same source. It's not the same play, but they use the same source, therefore some of the characters overlap. So I am wishing you all well. I hope you thought it was a bit different to maybe go back to the classroom and listen to my voice. I'm so sorry if you found my voice boring, but get your head around what this play's about, make some notes. The next assignment after this will be to actually read the play a couple of times. However, I would like evidence of your notes because I have to report everyone doing their assignments. Wishing you well and look forward to our return to the classroom. Take care, everyone.